Good evening, everyone. Welcome to In the Center of the Circle, show number 6. And my guest tonight is the esteemed Brian Fraser. And before we start talking to Brian, I'm just going to play a little music to get us into the mood, get us present. So take a deep breath. This isn't a chant, it's a simple song by my good friend Jack Fowler. It's called We Come Together. And I chose it because I think it's very fitting with where we're going to go this evening with Brian. And it's very simple, so if you want to sing along once you know it, please do. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry, woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord. One more time with feeling. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry, woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry, woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord. We come together now in one accord.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Deep breath, everyone. I'm always fond of saying that the space that we take after the song is just as important as the song itself. That we take a moment to just breathe in that energy that we just created.
So true.
So time to officially welcome my guest, Brian Fraser. I know Brian in a number of capacities. And this show, In the Center of the Circle, is all about celebrating community and fostering community, and to just bring into the center of the circle people that I know that I would like to honor and celebrate for the work that they do in the community to generate community, foster and build community. And I see Brian is doing that in a very big way. And so I thought he would be a natural. And actually, he said to me after he heard about the show, "Yeah, I'd like to be a part of that." So
unaccustomed as I am to shameless self-promotion. Yes, indeed.
Indeed. So here he is. So
good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome, Brian. My pleasure. So there are three components to Brian that I'm aware of, and who knows? Maybe we'll learn. Maybe we'll learn some
what
more
we'll discover
in the next hour or so. So let's start with of the three identities that I know you. The one that I think is the longest running is your identity as a minister. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is.
So why don't you tell us a little bit
about that? So at the age of 5,
Really?
yeah, I decided I was going to be a minister
Wow.
during Sunday, minister on Sunday, and a fireman during the week.
Wow.
So, and I have a very vivid memory
Huh.
of that. I mean, we only worked an hour a week, right? That's essentially. So you had to do something with the rest of it. And I was excited at the age of 5 about fire trucks.
Yeah.
Once I finally got my lips around trucks. And I won't tell you what I said is when I was 3.
I can well
Yeah, I
imagine.
can imagine, exactly. Well, anyhow. So I'm born and raised in the Presbyterian Church in Canada, Drummond Hill Presbyterian Church in Niagara Falls. Same minister all of my life. And started to preach at the age of 13, I think, for sunrise service on Easter Sunday morning.
Wow.
The passage was the Emmaus passage, the walk to Emmaus, where Jesus meets the 2 disciples and they don't recognize him. Have this wonderful conversation. And they finally figure out who it is when they're sitting down eating together, which is always a good thing for churches to do, for communities to do, where you have nourishment at the center of the circle. And then conversation around that nourishment.
So sorry, I want to interrupt you for a sec. So at 13, you were preaching.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that happen? Were you
just the invitation of the minister who was there? I mean, I think Bill. His name was Bill McEwen, and I think Bill had kind of figured out that I would probably be a good candidate for ministry. And by high school, I was thinking teaching, law, ministry. And as I went through my undergraduate work at the University of Toronto, decided that law wasn't really where my heart was. And so my entire career has been a combination of ministry in the parish and ministry in the college. So when I was in Toronto in a parish, I was teaching down at the university at the theological college and teaching, my discipline is Canadian church history. So I was teaching in the history department at Victoria University in religious studies. And then when I came out here to Vancouver in 1985, I came out as Dean of the Presbyterian College at UBC, St. Andrews Hall, taught history at Vancouver School of Theology, and then had a very good friend who taught history, modern Christian history and religious studies. So when he was on sabbatical, I would go over and teach him at UBC, Canadian Church History, his Canadian Church History course at UBC. So that was, and as I went through university, so when I went to U of T to do English and history in 1965, I lived at Knox College, which is the largest of the Presbyterian theological colleges there. So started to hang out with the theologues, with the people doing theology. Most of them at that point were still guys. And so it was this long theological education, because I did a 4-year degree in ending up in history, went back to my old high school and taught for a year, came back and did a master's in the history of education. Then I worked as a general secretary of the Student Christian Movement, which was kind of the left wing of the Christian movements on campus. Then did 3 years of theology, and then went straight into a 3-year doctoral program in Canadian history up at York University.
Well, I want to come back to that. What happened at 13? Because I didn't know that. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
That someone would see that in you at 13. Like, so what was going on in you at that time? And you know, I can tell from everything that you just said that there was a clarity that you had about that piece of you.
There was a clarity and it was an interesting clarity as I look back on it, because unlike a lot of people of the next generation down, I was born and bred in the church, right? So there were 21 of us baptized at the same time in that church.
Wow.
And so grew up as a kid through Sunday school, went to Cubs and Scouts in that congregation.
Right.
Just never. I mean, I've never had a period of actual rebellion against the church. I mean, I've had lots of times when I've questioned this and questioned that and got ticked off at the Presbyterians and figured I'll go over and be an Anglican.
That'll really get them.
That one, yeah, absolutely. It serves them right. No, it was because when I was a kid, I went to an Anglican camp in the summer and near Hamilton, Ancaster, Camp Artaban, the eastern version of Camp Artaban. And so, but then I looked at their structure of authority, and that kind of turned me off. I remember playing golf at one point 10 years ago with Michael Ingham, who was the Anglican bishop out here. And I said to Michael, so remind me what I have to call you if I become an Anglican? And so he went through all of these regal titles.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, maybe not. He said, that's just as well. We probably wouldn't have you anyway. So I think, so where that came from, and I had started to do public speaking contests in public school, really.
Okay.
So there was the Lions Club and the Optimist Club, and those were the two primary ones. And the Legion had public speaking contests. So I did reasonably well in those. My claim to fame in the Canadian context, for anybody who knows Canadian context, was one year I managed to beat Eddie Greenspan and Brian Greenspan in the same speaking contest. Now, they went on to be incredibly prominent criminal lawyers.
Wow.
Eddie Greenspan represented Conrad Black, and anyhow, so
when did the Rotary, all that stuff, was that 12 or after?
That was probably started at 10 or 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was early. They used to have different age categories, and so you'd have the contest in the school,
right,
and then the winner of the contest in the school would go to the kind of city, and then the region, and then the district, and I remember my dad and I driving up. I think this was the Lions Club, driving up to a Lions Club speaking contest for Eastern Canada, Ontario, and Quebec, and Rwanda, yeah, Quebec.
Well, it's interesting as you're talking about all
I
this.
haven't thought about this stuff for years.
Well,
this is
when I talk about my musical life, I talk about having my Saturday night life and my Sunday morning life, and how for the longest time they were parallel.
Yeah.
And then they started intertwining more and more, as both of those things to this day are very important to me.
Yeah.
But I've never heard anyone talk about the spiritual path and the speaking path as being.
And it really wasn't, in a sense, the speaking path didn't move off church focus until I decided to leave St. Andrews Hall and the university in 2001 and set up Jazz Think.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden there are these two parallels.
Right.
But the thing with living in that many circles is that they all feed each other. I mean, one of the things that I've been a great fan for most of my life of Peter Drucker and his understanding of organizations. And he used to say, look, 90% of organizations are exactly the same. There's 10% is different. So there are certain differences in the church. There's certain differences in nonprofit work, societies where I do a lot of work, in business organizations and government organizations, crown corporations, those kinds of things. But 90% of the dynamics essentially is the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
I want to talk to you about Jazz Think, but before we do,
let's have some more music.
Let's have some more music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a song that I think would be pretty apropos. It's called "The Making of a Soul," and it's about being inspired by. It's resonating with me as being very much in line with everything we're talking about. They're just everything counts. Everything goes into the mix and makes us who we are today. All the
As I remember it from your album, yes, it's most appropriate.
There you go. Thank you.
If you don't have that album, you should buy it.
he gets 10% of everything I make.
When I left the university and went out on my own, it was all of a sudden you're without this paycheck every 2 weeks, which is an interesting transition. Yeah. But I developed a new version of the KISS principle.
Which is?
Keep it shamelessly self-promoted. So,
And
over to you.
Jana's version of that is keep it simple, sweetie. So, both are equally applicable.
Indeed.
So this is called The Making of a Soul, and for those of you watching who would like to sing along, and I'll have a look at the screen in a second and just see who's with us. Actually, let me do that right now. Meryl's with us, and Lisa's with us, and my mom is with us.
Oh, great.
Yay. And a couple of other people whose names I can't see. It says there are five. I can't scroll, folks, because if I scroll, I'll lose the internet connection. So thanks for being here. I'm very appreciative to all of you for being here. And I will look over every once in a while and see what the comments are that are rolling. So this is The Making of a Soul, and if you'd like to sing along, please do. The chorus is just the making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. The making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul. I've come as a magician and an ordinary man to make a contribution and be part of the plan. There is no destination, the journey is the goal. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Whoa, whoa, busy with the making of a soul. Part of me is an artist, part of me's a fool. I have no map to guide me, there is no book of rules. The only thing that's certain is joy will lead me home. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Whoa, whoa, busy with the making of a soul. Sing with me. The making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Lurking in my shadow are things I must reclaim. I call them out into the light, give each one a name. 'Cause everyone's a mirror that helps to make me whole. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Whoa, whoa, busy with the making of a soul. Sing with me again. The making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul. I'm part of God unfolding, I trust and fully give. All that really matters is that while I live, my gifts are what is needed. The universe is home. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Whoa, busy with the making of a soul. The making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul. Last time. The making of a soul, the making of a soul. I'm busy with the making of a soul.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, that was a good lead-in.
I thought so. Yeah, Jazz Think.
Jazz Think.
I know about Jazz Think, and you and I have had some great conversations about Jazz Think, but just and what I don't know is where the idea came from. So please tell everybody about the idea and what inspired you to start it.
So one of the first questions people ask me when we're talking about Jazz Think is, what instrument do you play?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that I don't play an instrument that one would normally associate with jazz. I play the voice in conversation. So we'll come back to that.
Mm-hmm.
when I finished off at the university and was looking around for a way of generating revenue to live the life that I was aspiring to live at that stage, I've been a jazz fan since university days. And so my introduction to jazz was Oscar Peterson's Canadiana Suite. So I'm a Canadian historian.
Yeah.
And that gave kind of a musical, emotive, instinctive grounding to the ideas that I was playing with in Canadian history. The primary focus of my work was church history, Canadian church history, Presbyterian history. And it had to do with a movement in the late 1890s through to the First World War that's called the social gospel. So what's the social application of Christian principles and Christian character to the way in which society lives together, essentially? And those sorts of questions began to emerge in the English-speaking world in the 1850s, 1860s, in response to that kind of intense individualism that you found in English utilitarianism and some other movements. So it was what really became kind of the left wing of the social justice, social reform wing of the church. And that's what I was particularly interested in. So when I left the university, then the question became, what do I do with the next phase of my life? And I was intrigued by is there a connection, which I hadn't really explored in any significant way up until that point. Is there a connection between jazz as an art form and organizations? Because what I was particularly interested in Canadian history was, how does leadership influence organizational development and organizational culture? Right. So that was when I look back over what drew my attention. It was, how do leaders in relationship with others create cultures, create meaning, create significance, create reform, shape and reshape society. And so there was some wonderful stuff that I found. By that point, Google was around. So you could Google jazz and organizations. You could Google improvisation in organizations and just come up. And there weren't a lot of people writing about it, but the few that were writing in a very rich, wonderful way. People like Carl Weick, W-E-I-C-K, who teaches business at the University of Michigan. He'd done some fascinating work. The person who was probably most influential at that point was a fellow by the name of Frank Barrett. Barrett taught at the Naval Graduate School in California and the Fielding Graduate Institute. He, a couple of years ago, took the essay that I first ran across and expanded it into a book called Yes to the Mess, and the surprising lessons in leadership from jazz. And so he's got 7 principles that he takes. He was a pianist in the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra.
Wow. And
one of the founders of the academic discipline of appreciative inquiry. So all of this gets woven into this wonderful book. If you've got a chance, it's a good read, and I think it will be stimulating for you. But Edgar Schoen, or Donald Schoen, not Edgar, I'm thinking of Edgar Schein in the culture stuff, but Donald Schoen, who taught education at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, he was an amateur jazz musician playing piano and clarinet.
Okay.
And so in his book called The Reflective Practitioner, he talks about jazz as a model as well. And he was one of the first people that pointed out to me that the most common form of jazz in human experience is ordinary conversation. So you've got structure and vocabulary. That's the structure. You've got vocabulary and grammar. That's your structure.
Yep.
But every time you use that structure in a conversation, you use it differently. You improvise around it. Right? So you and I could be you could have asked the same question, and I could be rambling on about the same topic, but in very different ways.
Right.
So, so that whole idea of if we were to, so as Jazz Think evolved, essentially it boiled down to your voice creates a vibe that generates a value. But that's just a given, right? That's physics.
Voice, vibe,
and value.
Beautiful.
Right. So every time you open your voice and it makes a sound, and that sound connects with someone else, there's a relationship established that generates a value.
Right.
So if you were to manage the sound and substance of your voice in a conversation, the way jazz musicians manage the sound and substance of their instruments in a performance, what difference would it make to the quality of community that you're generating? And so when I started doing this, I hooked up with a Vancouver jazz musician by the name of Corey Weeds. Now, Corey, at that point, this was just before Corey opened Corey Weeds Cellar Jazz Club on Broadway. He's had that for 14 years, closed it down about a year ago. Great sax player, and has a record label called Cellar Live that I think is now up to something like 110 titles. So Corey understands the dynamics in the world of jazz at a depth that I will probably never get to, but I keep having conversations with him and trying to learn. So Corey and his dad Bill, and we've gone through 3 bass players, Paul Rushka and Doug Stevenson, and now John Bentley, in the Jazz Think trio. So when the client can afford a live trio, they come along, they get involved in the conversation.
So just to be clear for people, so this is when you get a speaking engagement.
Speaking engagement, we call it a Jazz Think gig.
Right, and so which would normally be you doing some sort of a presentation and then there being a workshop afterwards, concurrently. Or what's the
often it's a keynote and then a workshop. We call them master classes after on how to have the kinds of conversations we've been talking about.
Right.
The keynote is 45, 50 minutes. The jazz musicians play. We always start, whether it's a workshop or a keynote, we always start by listening for the wisdom in the room. And by that I mean, I come into a situation assuming that there is a tremendous amount of understanding of the dynamics of great teamwork or the dynamics of great leadership in the people who have gathered. But how do you surface that so that you can then enter into a conversation with them? So the way in which we do that is to ask them a question. So curiosity is core in all of this. I mean, curiosity is absolutely essential to good jazz, and I think it's essential to good organizations. I'll come back to that in a minute with another little framework that I've developed. But so we begin by asking people the qualities of great teamwork or great leadership, whatever the focus is, great community, that they see in the performance of the jazz group. So they huddle in 2s and 3s, and they've got stickies and Sharpies, and the jazz group plays for 5 minutes or so. And they're chatting away with one another and writing these ideas down, and then you put them up on the wall. And the wall is covered with this wisdom that's, I've looked at, I'm a recovering academic without too much emphasis on the recovering, so I still read all of this stuff. I've been doing it for 40 years. And what most groups come up with is an MBA course on leadership and teamwork, in terms of just the core concepts and ideas. And so then we build on that and say, is this the kind of aspiration that you have for the teams in which you work at in your organization? And the answer is always yes. And so then in classic appreciative inquiry theory, you start with the aspiration or the goal. Then you talk about what's getting in the way of that goal being achieved even more. And then you look at possibilities for moving forward to constantly improve things. And so that's basically the shape of the early part of a Jazz Think gig. And then we look at the kinds of conversations that will create that kind of space for
Right.
collaboration.
And so something that I've just as I'm hearing all of this, what I love about all of this is the way that you take the language associated with jazz, the form, and apply it to all these things. And in particular, I want to address the notion of it started for me when you were talking about the word improvisation. Improvisation can be a very scary word for non-musicians because they think it's a very exclusive experience.
Right.
So I love the way that you are empowering people with a much broader definition of improvisation and applying it to something that we all know how to do, which is speak.
And I actually did the math on this roughly. If you are the age of 13, you have the 10,000 required hours of intentional practice in the basic skill of conversation, which is talking. And so the question now becomes, so you've mastered your voice. You've mastered the instrument of your voice in terms of knowing how to create words and connect through conversation. Now the question really becomes, how are you going to hone that to generate the value that you want to generate in that group?
And I want to just take a little break here and do another song, but I'm thinking that what's key to all this, of course, is the interplay. So I think it's so wonderful the way you have when budget allows, that you have a jazz trio who's in this experience with you, and you just say, "Okay, guys, go," and they do their thing, and then people are breaking off and describing what they've experienced just from watching these guys do their thing.
And then when we come back and do the debrief, if I can.
Yeah.
When we come back and do the debrief, no matter how large the group is, they get involved in the conversation, right? Because, somebody's saying, I remember one of the key insights I got in all of this early on was somebody asked Corey, what does the leader of a jazz group do? Because a lot of people wouldn't figure out who the leader was in the jazz group. And so Corey actually got asked that question 3 or 4 times before he came up with this answer. He said, I create the space for others to perform and then perform with them.
Yeah.
And I've been working on that for 6-7 years now, and it's a brilliant image of leadership. And it's not positional, it's influential. You can do that from anywhere in the organization.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. If you're in a hospital team caring for a patient, you can be the guy mopping the floor or the woman bringing in the food cart. It's the vibe your voice creates as you show up in that space. And it doesn't matter who, and your voice is every bit as valuable to the well-being of that patient, to the soul of that patient, to the who's the center of that circle of care, every bit as important as the voice of the doctor. And we don't honor that. More music.
Ding, ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding, ding.
That's why you had to be on the show. and I hope that we all take that to heart, that really, regardless of what our path looks like, it's all valuable. It's all good. We all play our part.
We all back to the making of the soul, where you sang about the contribution. Everybody, every soul has a contribution to make, and we all have the opportunity to choose to value that contribution, no matter what it is.
Just before I sing, let me just have another look over here and see what's going on. Mom, looks like you're still dealing with issues about your computer. God bless you for trying. Okay. So, I think
I haven't got my glasses on, so I haven't got a clue who's on.
That's okay.
But it's great to be with you.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do next is, this is a song of mine called A Prayer to You. And it's a song of devotion that was inspired by A Course in Miracles, but to just put it in a wider context, I think it's very much in line with what we're talking about. To just everything plays its part. Everything and everyone plays its part. And I just like that idea. The impetus for me writing the song is a goal to which I aspire is, wouldn't it be nice if I could see everything as an act of devotion, the face of God,
Yeah.
a prayer, whatever language resonates with whomever is listening.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's what's behind the song, and that's just what
Nice.
I'm hearing as
Absolutely.
we're having this
No,
conversation.
It's very much in line with what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Again, this is simple, so when you get it, please sing along. May all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, a prayer to you. May all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, my love. In every face may I see you, in every voice may I hear you, in all that is may this be true, may we be one, may I be you, may all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, a prayer to you. May all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, my love. In every breath may I breathe you, in every drop may I taste you, in all that is may this be true, may we be one, may I be you. Whoa, 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 whoa. May all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, my love. In every touch may I feel you, in every heart may I feel you, in all that is may this be true, may we be one, may I be you, may all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, a prayer to you. May all that I think and all that I do be a prayer to you, a prayer to you, my love. Be a prayer to you, my love. Be a prayer to you, my love. A prayer to you.
Very good. So have you told folks the story of
I have
the
not.
stick?
I have not.
So tell them the story of the stick, because then we can riff off that.
Sure. So for those of you who are joining us a little late, this is In the Center of the Circle. And it's a show in which we celebrate community and have everyone, both the guests who are part of the show and you, the listeners, claim your rightful place, which is the center of the circle. There is no one on the
Nice.
outside. There is no one in the margin. Everyone is in the center of the circle. So to honor, thank you, Brian, and so to honor your request, this, for those of you who may not know, this instrument I'm playing, this fine instrument I'm playing, is called a stick. There are actually 8 different kinds of sticks, but it's basically the brainchild of a man in California who obviously thinks outside of the box.
Absolutely, obviously.
His name is Emmett Chapman, and he was a guitar player, is a guitar player, and decided to come up with a design which really focused on using both hands to create sound instead of just one hand plucking or strumming. And so that's the idea. I'm just tapping the strings with both hands. So it's the short version is I tell people this is keyboard technique on a stringed instrument.
Ah, okay.
So that's the simplest way to explain it. So I'm just trying to make as much noise as I can at once. It's like, and sing too. So.
Well, since I first encountered this weird contraption,
and you
with
mean
my
stick,
friend,
not
the
me.
Stick, yes. Well, I was going to leave it a little ambiguous.
All right.
It struck me that one of the best definitions of innovation and creativity that I've run across is that it's combining things that already exist in new ways that enhance the impact of those things.
Yeah.
And so this seems to be a perfect example of that. And the way you play it and what it does for you in terms of inspiring those great songs and inspiring the work that you're doing and speaking and in performing. I think it's a great example of if we thought of combining various ideas in our heads through our voices in the way in which the stick combines guitar and bass and keyboards and stringed instruments.
Yeah.
If we imagine what might be possible if we did those kinds of things, who knows what the results would be, but worth trying. I think we're in a period in our social development where a lot of the old conventions are falling apart. We're not remembering them. They've proved negative in their impact rather than positive in their impact. There's a lot of stuff in the church that would fall into that category. And so it's a period of experimentation. I mean, where do we find those circles of people who are open to that kind of experimentation about creating a just, a peaceful, and a beautiful community? So if you think about my own religious tradition, spiritual tradition is Christianity. And if you were to come to Brentwood Presbyterian Church where I'm ministering half-time and listen Sunday after Sunday, you would find a pretty traditional language for expressing my faith in the sermons. But one of the things that I've been working on consciously since I began to put jazz and organizations together is what are jazz musicians play off chord charts. You know all of this. But there's very few notes. So a sheet of paper like this doesn't have notes on it. But a sheet of paper like this, he doesn't have any chord charts around. But a sheet of paper like this would let you play together for about 20 minutes. Right? Or more.
Yep.
You could do it in 3 minutes, but you could also do it. So there's this essential message or this essential chord progression that you start with. And there's usually a sense of rhythm that you start with. You're not stuck to it, but you start with. And there's a key. So if you watch Corey when he starts the Jazz Think Trio going, they have already chosen what the melody will be, and they've chosen what the key will be. And they may have a conversation 5 seconds before they start playing as to what key it's going to be in. And what they also do is leave open to full exploration what the harmonies will be. Right? They may have played it before, and they've tried these harmonies, and they'll try those, but they may go off and try harmonies they've never tried before.
Right.
So Charlie Parker once said, look, music is melody, harmony, and rhythm. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of that in terms of the conversations in which you co-create your organizations, your communities, whatever they may be, you co-create the circle that you happen to be in. Same principle applies. What's the melody?
Yeah.
Are you open to listening to various harmonies that others, and what's the rhythm of it? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be calm? Is it going to be frenetic? Is it a good idea to be fast and frenetic, or do we need to slow it down and calm it down? You can do all of that with the modulation of your voice and with the vibe that you create. And so managing your voice that intentionally is not easy.
Yeah.
But in the end, that's your voice in conversation co-creates the organizations you're part of, the communities that you're part of. So I thank you for that. That was
my pleasure.
That was delightful.
I just I realize I haven't been saying your name enough. This is Brian Fraser, folks. Brian Fraser. I know Brian in a couple of different capacities, and the reason why I asked him to join us in the center of the circle, for those of you who didn't hear me say this off the top, is Brian is a minister at a Presbyterian church in the Greater Vancouver area. He's also a keynote coach and presenter of an idea called Jazz Think, where he actually incorporates jazz music, as he's been talking about in his presentations. And something which we haven't talked about, which I want to get to in a second, is I just want to have a look at what comments are going on the screen. And it looks like my mom gave it her best shot, but she's off. She's having technical issues that she's trying to solve.
Hopefully she'll watch the rest of it.
Yes, and
asynchronously.
And actually, this would be a wonderful opportunity to say that all of these shows I am recording, and you can watch them all at your leisure. If you're not able to watch them in real time, I would really like to make them as widely available as possible. So I will give you information at the end of this about how you can find the link. So, Brian. Yeah, the third identity that I know of you, which we haven't spoken about at all yet, is CAPS. So CAPS, for those of you watching who don't know, is an acronym for the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And there are many chapters in Canada, and there is a chapter here in Vancouver, and Brian is this year's president. So that's one way. It's another way that I know you. Actually, that's how I came to know you.
That's how we initially met.
Yeah. And so how does all of what we've talked about so far, your experience as a minister, your experience of Jazz Think and being a presenter, how does that go into and shape your role, your year as president of CAPS?
Yeah. So I've been a member of CAPS now for 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
When I went out on my own, I was looking around for what I now call communities of practice. So these are people that do similar things that come together in associations, we could call. Let's call them circles for the purpose of this program.
Yep.
So they come together in circles, and their primary reason for being there is to connect with other people who are doing the same sorts of things they are, and then work with those people, engage in conversations with those people to provide mutual support and mutual encouragement and mutual, at times, corrections. So I want to be in a community of practice where I'm provoked. So the title I gave myself in Jazz Think, because when you own the organization, you get to give yourself your own titles, right? So when you're a solopreneur in both senses of that word, lead provocateur. And there's a verse in the letter to the Hebrews in the New Testament, in the Christian tradition, which is really a sermon. It's not really a letter, it's a sermon. In which one of the English translations is provoke one another to love and good deeds. Which is pretty much a core chart of how I've seen my calling for most of my life. So provoke one another, and provoke has got that little edge to it. I mean, literally, it means call forth.
Yeah.
But it's got that little edge to it that you're going to get pushed beyond your comfort zone. Yeah. And that's what I think we do with jazz. With jazz thing. I mean, jazz is a model that a lot of people would never think about in relationship to an organization. So it's already, just to bring the idea of jazz into an organization is pushing the boundaries. Let alone if the organization is filled with country and western fans. But the interesting,
God forbid.
The interesting thing is that I had a team of about 8 people, none of whom liked jazz. They hated jazz. They loved country and western. But they were willing to kind of suspend their hatred for a while. And but what one of them said, who was actually a country and western singer, he said, there's far more improvisation in country and western and in rock and almost any musical form than most of us would admit. Right. So what you're saying really applies to any musical
Absolutely
form.
True.
Yeah.
I know that as a musician. I absolutely know that.
So CAPS is this wonderful community of practice in the British Columbia or the Vancouver and British Columbia chapter. Spans the whole province. The little tagline we've developed is that we connect and enrich experts who speak professionally. And so if anyone listening to this, whether it's here in the Vancouver area, across Canada, in the States, it's the National Speakers Association, chapters all over the States as well. Yeah. If you are interested in either developing your expertise into a speaking or seminar or workshop business and are looking for a community that is incredibly generous in helping you figure out the business of doing that and then supporting you as you build that business, that's the community to connect with. I belong to a number of communities of practice. CAPS is by far, hands down, the most generous in terms of the experts who are established, very successful speakers, giving of their time, giving of their expertise. So it's a great group. And if I'm sure that my contact information will be on the slide at the end of this show. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and if you're interested. Yeah. But thanks for raising that.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome. And as I'm fond of saying, I've now been to many musical conferences and many speaker conferences, and I tell people in one sentence the difference between the two. At a music conference, you'll run into a number of artists who are just desperate to be heard, to have someone hear their music.
Interesting.
And so, the underlying question is, can you help me?
Yes.
And you feel that sense of desperation, right? And everyone, can I give you this? Can I give you that? Can I give you my picture?
Me a gig?
Can I? Exactly.
Yeah.
Can I give you my CD?
Yeah.
Can I give you my business card? Without exception, everyone I've met in the speaking world comes up to you, engages fully, and at the end of the conversation hands you their card and says, call me and tell me what I can do for you.
Exactly. Anything I can do to help. That's great. I had not thought of that stark a contrast, but that's very true. Yeah. So thanks for raising that.
Oh yeah.
It's time for more music.
Pleasure. Yes. This feels like the perfect time to inject a little Beatles into the proceedings.
Oh, wonderful.
Because I think they said it really well with this song. And hang on a second. Just speak amongst yourselves. As I don't have the words memorized. Here we go. This is one we all know. What would you think if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with little help from my friends. I get high with little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with little help from my friends.
Perfect.
What do I do when my love is away? Does it worry you to be alone? How do I feel by the end of the day? Are you sad because you're on your own? No, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Do you need anybody? I need somebody to love. Or could it be anybody? I want somebody to love. Would you believe in a love at first sight? Yes, I'm certain that it happens all the time. What do you see when you turn out the light? I can't tell you, but I know it's mine. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Do you need anybody? I need somebody to love. Or could it be anybody? I want somebody to love. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. I'm gonna try with a little help from my friends. Yes, I get by with a little help from my friends. With a little help from my friends.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Let's just have a look and see if there are any more words. No. Okay. It's been my extreme pleasure this last hour to have Brian Fraser as my guest.
It's been a delight. Thank you for the conversation.
Brian, my great pleasure. Brian is a minister at Brentwood Presbyterian Church in the greater Vancouver area. He is also a keynote speaker and coach, and the name of his program is Jazz Think, and jazzthink.com is your website, right? If people want to know more about the program. And thirdly, I know and respect Brian as the president of the Vancouver chapter of CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And in all three of those roles, I see him very much as someone who celebrates community. And I want to make a point of saying this. You shared this wonderful quote with me a couple of days ago, which I wrote down. And when I asked you what your why was, you said generating space for positive collaboration.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
So I really see that as the thread that weaves throughout.
Yeah, very much
everything that you do.
And it's creating. Essentially it's creating space for the conversations that allow us to co-create a positive future.
Yeah. Yeah. Just very quickly, what's next? What's coming down the pipe? Your responsibilities as president of CAPS continue, of course.
Continue through the year. Brentwood, there's some interesting stuff happening there.
And how can people find out more about Brentwood? Is there a site? Or?
Yep, Brentwood PC for PresbyterianChurch.ca.
Okay.
Is the website.
Okay.
But it's this marvelous space which has incredible acoustics. And so we are actively making it available to the community as a community arts center. You've played there.
I have.
Andrea Menard, who has been on this show, has played there. And so the congregation is wonderful. It kind of we're the tagline we're using for that is a space of grace for the arts.
Space of grace for the arts. I love it. Beautiful.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that.
So I will, when I post this episode online tonight or tomorrow, I will include all of Brian's websites so that those of you who want more information on any of these things will be able to get it easily.
Yeah, put the CAPS Vancouver and BC website in as well. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I'll get the list of what sites you want listed in a few minutes.
All right.
So make sure that
Thank you so much. What a delight this has been. I can't believe an hour's going.
Yeah, I know. That's great. I hope people that have been watching and listening feel the same way. As is my custom, I'd like to take us out with my chant Metta, which in the Buddhist tradition is loving kindness or unconditional love. And very simple. When you feel comfortable, please join in. and I will cue you on the words for each verse before we sing them. The first one is, may we be filled with love. Here we go. May I be filled, may you be filled, may we be filled with love. May I be filled, may you be filled, may we be filled with love. May I be kind to all. May I be kind, may you be kind, may we be kind to all. May I be kind, may you be kind, may we be kind to all. May I be safe from harm. May I be safe, may you be safe, may we be safe from harm. May I be safe, may you be safe, may we be safe from harm. May I be well and whole. May I be well, may you be well, may we be well and whole. May I be well, may you be well, may we be well and whole. May I be filled with peace. May I be filled, may you be filled, may we be filled with peace. May I be filled, may you be filled, may we be filled with peace. And now to finish we'll sing, may happiness, may happiness, may happiness be ours. May happiness, may happiness, may happiness be ours. May happiness, may happiness, may happiness be ours. And let's finish by singing Om a few times. All notes are welcome. Breathe when you need to. Last time. Deep breath, everyone. Thank you very much for spending your last hour with us. Once again, this is In the Center of the Circle, and my guest today has been Brian Fraser. My name is Nathan Aswell. Within the next 12 hours, I will post this episode on YouTube so that people can watch it at their leisure. You can watch it again, or please invite your friends to watch it and spread the word about it. I really hope to serve as many people with this show as I can. And if you want to know what the link is, just go to my Facebook page or to my website. I will post it in a number of different places so that you will be able to find the link. So thanks very much for your time and attention. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks again. Take care.
Go with love. Namaste.